In this age of remakes and games being reimagined, I think maybe Bioshock Infinite could use one. So, I've had America on the mind because of its upcoming 250th anniversary, so I thought it would be a good time to talk about a potential Bioshock remake. I mean, as it is right now, it's fine. I just think it's the weakest in the trilogy, which is a shame because you see how ambitious it was from the reveal trailer. So here's my wish list for how they can make it just stand out. I realize what I'm about to say might not be original, but I just want to start a conversation. So first off, change the layout of the areas to make them seem more open-ended. I'm reminded of the Dead Space remake and how it incorporated a more interconnected Ishimura that allowed backtracking and further exploration once you got a certain weapon or key. If they could replicate that with the whole World's Fair in the Sky aesthetic that they talked about in old interviews, I bet it could work, especially with the more advanced hardware, and make everything feel more ominous and eerie despite being sunny and bright. There was a beauty to Rapture even when it was in ruin, and the same could be said for Columbia in the final levels of the game. I think the Vigors should be reintroduced as tools for Columbia's elite police and military forces before the recipes were leaked and people started using them illegally. That would make more sense than people just having them whenever they wanted. It would also explain why the Vox have Murder of Crows and Devil's Kiss. Songbird should be a boss, absolutely. Everyone was very disappointed that he only showed up in cutscenes. You should have him take to the air and fire cannonballs at Booker. You could shoot him from ground level, but activating these special Tesla coils to shoot upwards will make him crash land and take more damage. Maybe approach it like Resident Evil boss. Now, overall, I think this game should tie in with the original by being a requel, taking place in a new dimension where Booker's visions of New York on fire are now replaced with nightmares of him drowning. Maybe this version of Columbia is abandoned by Comstock, like the Comstock featured in Episode 1 of Burial at Sea, and then there was a power struggle to see who would inherit the nation in the sky. If not, then maybe have Booker arrive in a version of Columbia that's already had that war, that civil war with the Vox, and everything is already in ruin. It would be something that Booker had no part in. Like I kinda said before, there was something cool about Rapture with how it was just in ruin and you had to figure out and piece together what exactly happened here. And it was up to interpretation. But not only is this the aftermath of the war, but the entirety of this version of the game is the aftermath of the initial Bioshock Infinite, if that makes any sense at all. That being said, maybe don't show the Lutesses until the very end. Their omnipotence kinda downplayed the stakes in the original by saying all this could be changed. They weren't bad, they just didn't add much to the narrative in the long run. Maybe have them just hidden in some areas like G-Man. Something about them always seemed creepy, a little villainous almost, they see Booker and everyone else as test subjects and not as people. And while on the topic of character motivations, make Slate more in line with Comstock, since he and Booker are the same person. Comstock wouldn't have his problem with Slate if he just told him the truth from the beginning. Instead, Slate would call Booker the imposter and attack him, have the Boxer Rebellion exhibit feature Slate and his men under Comstock's orders, and have them be recognized for their service. This would mean no alliance with Fitzroy, but that would be a much needed change. And I guess that could also add to the theme that when there's war or a conflict, there aren't any good guys, there are just victims. Maybe most enemies you come across aren't like people working for one side. They could just be roving packs of gangs that formed after the promise of heaven on earth was taken away from them during the Colombia Civil War. And you know how splicers went crazy for abusing Adam? Maybe something like that happened to the people of Colombia, but instead of genetic mutations, it's their alternate selves from other worlds crossing over, trying to take control, and that would add to the chaos too. I saw that in one of the early trailers, but it was just left on the cutting room floor. The Lutece's dimensional technology is going haywire, and these are the side effects. Another story beat I would like to see added would be the inclusion of Preston Downs, like interacting with Booker and Elizabeth. His story with him switching sides was a great aspect of his character in the original game. I'm thinking he starts out as a reoccurring enemy, but maybe we could make him into an ally if Booker spares him, kind of like what happened in Bioshock 2 with the people you came across in that game. Speaking of Booker and Elizabeth, I don't think they should hop dimensions. That was, for me, the point of no return for Infinite, where rhyme and reason were just thrown out the window. And I'm going to go on a bit of a side tangent. I'm actually now realizing that there's supposed to be 2 Elizabeths in the same dimension by the end of the original game. Like, if you think about it, when the world where Lynn the gunsmith was bailed out, it's shown that Elizabeth was moved from Monument Island to somewhere else. And keep in mind, our Elizabeth was taken by Songbird and brainwashed in the future, and we know she's ours because she recognized Booker. So where did this other Elizabeth go? Like, do you see how things got out of hand, or just the story lost itself? Instead, like I said, by the time you get there, there's no searching for Mr. Lin, no making a deal with Fitzroy. Finkton should be rubble, so let's just avoid that if we can. Now, what I just said would be hard to implement Elizabeth into, but I guess to start, have Booker discover her in a bunker, and maybe somehow he has ways to get her off the island, and maybe that'll convince her. Like, she's right on board with him no matter what, and doesn't try to, like, betray him the same way she did when she saw that she was being taken to New York instead of Paris. Just something to work with there, I guess. And finally, have the choices in-game actually matter, whether or not you kill Slate, Fink, other key characters, and the way you interact with these people impacts the way Elizabeth sees you and sees the surface world. And that would impact the ending the same way Bioshock 2's ending was impacted by Delta's daughter and how she spared Sophia. For Elizabeth, based on how you act, she could either want to live life peacefully with you in Paris, or if she sees the world is just as terrible as Colombia is, she would just rain fire down upon it, like in the original game's Visions. I think they could work with that. But realistically, though, I really can't figure out who the main villain of this game is, so I don't know how they would get to that point. I brainstormed it for a bit, and aside from the existing antagonists, I guess the Lutece's would fit that bill, at least a version of them who aren't level-headed and well-spoken, more condescending and spiteful. But that is what I would like from a Bioshock Infinite remake. And I know this is all just a pipe dream. I don't know if Bioshock will make a comeback, especially when other established franchises are hawking the spotlight. But, you know, the same thing was said about Dead Space, so we'll just have to wait and see. Until then, happy birthday, America, and here's to another 250 years.